Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
We have 46 guests on the Cognitive Crucible today. Two of those guests are Mr. Austin Branch and Lieutenant General retired Lori Reynolds, who are also IPA members. So, Austin, can I pass it over to you, please, to run the panel?
Absolutely. And thanks, John, and thanks, IPA members. And I know this is being recorded to be shared with lots of other members who could not be present with us today, and for others outside the organization that would be interested in this brief exchange. First, I've got to say thank you to Lieutenant General Lori Reynolds, recently the former Deputy Commandant for Information in the United States Marine Corps with a long and distinguished career in our Marine Corps, and one of the leaders in the defense enterprise information professionalism and professionals, and has really made a mark not only in the evolution of our Marine Corps in this space, but certainly across the Department of Defense. I have the great pleasure of also working closely with General Reynolds at the Applied Research Lab for Intelligence and Security at the University of Maryland. And if you don't know about ARLIS, it is the 14th UARC. It is sponsored by the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and it is the UARC that's really focused not only on intelligence and security, but the cognitive sciences as well. And you can find out more about that by not only going to its website, but you can inquire with Matt Venhouse and others that are members of IPA, because there's a unique relationship between IPA and ARLIS with regard to Phoenix Challenge, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, which I think you see the quad chart. But before we get into Phoenix Challenge, and if you could, John, just go back to the previous slide so people aren't just staring at the Phoenix Challenge slide. I wanted to, and again, this is a discussion. This is not some formal briefing or outline. This is an opportunity for General Reynolds and I to talk a little bit about what we both think about this space, where the gaps are, some of the critical efforts. Again, we're working together with a team of other senior leaders, not only at ARLIS, but across the defense enterprise. And then what I'd like to do then is emphasize what's happening with Phoenix Challenge and why it might answer or address some of the questions that were posited earlier in the discussion. We're going to touch on a few of those things. So General Reynolds, if you don't mind, if you could just say a few words and share, if you could, some of the thoughts you have about where this enterprise is, where it is in the Defense Department, where the gaps are, and where you think we ought to prioritize our efforts. Over.
Yeah, Austin, thank you. First, to the entire Information Professionals Association kind of, team, you folks have kept these ideas alive for so long. I'm so grateful to be a part of this now. So thank you for all that you do. And Austin, thanks for the question. Look, once I retired, Austin called me and said, "Hey, there's this thing called ARLIS. We're trying to keep, moving the ball forward in this whole cognitive space." And I immediately said, "I'm in." Why? Because I think this area of work is going to be increasingly important to our ability to compete strategically. And there's just so many things that I was compelled by. My last job in the Marine Corps, as Austin said, I was Deputy Commandant for Information, and had an opportunity with the team that I had there to really think differently about these non-lethal capabilities, operating below the level of conflict, the importance of the strategic narrative, the importance of bringing together space and cyber and electronic warfare, but also the cognitive effects and how we were always on our back foot in our recent conflicts. We were always on our back foot in how we responded to narratives that were targeted against us, really. And so I'm just really compelled by the idea of really maturing how we across the DoD work together in the information space. And there's been so many times that I think we get hung up on definitions and terminology, and it's just not productive. And so I am all in on the team that is trying to just get stuff done. You know, how do we mature these ideas? How do we think differently about the strategic competition or the conflict that we see in Eastern Europe right now? How does that inform how we get organized and mature the way we think about operations in the information environment? And I'm just pleased that there's a place like ARLIS that is putting all the science behind that work. So, Austin, that's where I am, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation, sir.
Thanks, General Reynolds, and I'm sure there will be questions. So let me pull the string on what General Reynolds has talked about doing things. As many of you know and already pointed out, you know, things don't just naturally happen. Has been part of this effort for the last 25, almost 30 years. You know, it's a grind, and but we have to move forward, as already pointed out. And to do that, I strongly believe it's really about a network of networks. I believe there's a whole bunch of great work already going on in different silos. This discussion, what General Reynolds and I are talking about, we're really kind of DoD focused right now for this part of the discussion, but we recognize that it's going on across the globe in the private sector and in our foreign partners and other industry, and of course our adversaries, who are really emphasizing and prioritizing efforts to compete and defeat our interests. So to that end, I wanted to be able to kind of talk about some of the initiatives that are percolating that might in fact make a difference. So to begin with, given all since the information was established as a warfighting function in the Department of Defense, our services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Space Force, have all been focused on okay, how do we organize for that? How do we emphasize that? And to different degrees, each of the services are working and engineering their various efforts, as evidenced by the Marine Corps and the establishment of the position that General Reynolds held at a very senior position at the 3-star level, working directly for the Commandant. That's how much importance the Marine Corps placed in this mission area. And the other services are looking at their pathways respectively. Also across the Department of Defense, there's all sorts of different efforts in the Joint Force and in labs and other places that are working on technologies and working on various efforts that are adjacent to or would support the kind of capabilities and on the horizon needs that we have in the department. The challenge is that, as I mentioned, they're already happening in silos. They're not necessarily integrated. There's no really sense of where's all that information, where's all that knowledge retained, so we could map solutions to requirements more rapidly. How do we work the acquisition, both traditional and non-traditional acquisition, to rapidly get at technical capabilities? Where do we operate at the point of intersection between the hard science and soft science? Imagine where cyber and EMSO intersect, and where that intersects the cognitive sciences. You know, who shepherds that? Who organizes and ensures that those intersections are developed and manifested? So to do that, one of the big efforts, and I believe, and we've been fortunate, if you can go to the slide, John, is we have to convene. Years ago, in 2000, USDI had established an event, a convening event called Phoenix Challenge. It was for the purpose of bringing the entire enterprise together and providing a common orientation, a platform for collaboration and relationships, so that the folks can be mutually informed and identify where we can fill gaps and advance our efforts. Sadly, after 2013, that Phoenix Challenge ceased to convene for various reasons. We recognize that to be able to establish and maintain a network of network, you have to use the power to convene, to bring the enterprise together, to be able to kind of identify all the various efforts, and to bring and I use the analogy, create the watering hole for all to come to and share not only their knowledge, but to establish those relationships and do and create the opportunities for improved outcomes. We resurrected it. It was done by about a year ago. ARLIS sponsored a virtual event to try and get the brand reestablished, and fortunately, it got the attention of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy and the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and they undertook the decision to sponsor the next series of convening events. And as already pointed out in the slides, it's not just a new start, it's consolidating some of the existing IO-related conferences, like the ones that CENTCOM hosted and the Naval Postgraduate and Indo-PACOM. And the key partners, now we bring in lots of the Defense Department organizations that have equity and bring them together. That includes, as someone had mentioned, the Global Engagement Center. Believe it or not, the Global Engagement Center certainly is a key partner in this and would benefit not only through their technical exchange teams and meetings that we're a part of, but to also allow them to be at the watering hole where we can mutually share and benefit from these exchanges. It's the platform to bring our leaders and practitioners together. And each Phoenix Challenge, the target is to have one each quarter, will build upon the other to maintain some mutual accountability. The approach is pretty simple. We set the stage, make sure we reduce ambiguity about what's happening in the department at the department level, and we engage the services who are the organizations with resources and the mandate to develop capability. The various enablers as articulated there, everything from technology development, training, resourcing, intelligence, and that these are the things that drive our capability across the Department of Defense, and certainly our joint force where they have the requirements. And as already mentioned, our international partners, and we cannot proceed without industry in the private sector. And if you look down in the lower right, the outcomes are what I've already mentioned. It's to reduce the ambiguity. It's to promote not only the awareness, but the kind of common orientation of our departmental enterprise and our interagency partners and international partners. And then to have an improved dialogue between government and industry in this space, as industry is leading a lot of the innovation and capability development across the United States enterprise and global enterprise. And then what we have to do is elevate the priority and value of all these efforts across not only our department, but our government. So I wanted to give an overview of that and why it's important to not only government, but IPA. I know is a key partner in helping work with ARLIS to support the Department of Defense's effort in this space, but recognize that this, as the Department of Defense tries to tighten up its shop group to organize more efficiently and effectively in this space, then so too we're a better contributor to our larger U.S. government efforts in this regard. I'll stop there. General Reynolds, any comments on this so far?
Also, I think it might just be helpful to also, and maybe I missed it, but the fact that the two biggest IO symposiums that we had at the COCOM levels have agreed to kind of pitch in to Phoenix Challenge now, in more of a, I mean, so it won't be just standalone conferences, right? You'll have this just continuous learning attitude, even though they might be hosted by INDOPACOM or CENTCOM or Naval Postgraduate School or others. But I think that's really important, and it sends a tremendous message that the COCOMs are willing to kind of work together like that. Over.
Thank you for that, General Reynolds. Exactly right. For example, I'll take CENTCOM. CENTCOM has, for the last few years, hosted the DoD Worldwide Information Operations Conference in Tampa, because there's been a lack of one at the department level. As CENTCOM, under the leadership of Colonel Andy Wiskman, agreed and thought it appropriate to consolidate that effort with Phoenix Challenge 1, which will be held the last week of April at the Applied Research Lab for Intelligence Security in Maryland. And the formal invitation is will soon be posted on a Phoenix Challenge website, and the formal announcement is imminent from the OSD Policy and Intelligence. But I'll tell you, the willingness of the Joint Commands and other organizations to consolidate with this effort has been remarkable. The appetite for folks wanting to come to the watering hole has also been equally remarkable. That includes our services, the labs, and the academic institutions, private industry, and others who recognize, like us as professionals, that we need to have a bonding agent for all of our various works, and that Phoenix Challenge could help serve that purpose and help serve as the kind of center point for that network of networks that I was speaking about.
Austin, I think the other thing that's really great about that is that it kind of acknowledges that this campaigning model that we seek from a global warfighting perspective is really just that. It's global. It's not just regional anymore. And so in the information environment, getting those COCOMs to work together with the services, with DoD, I just think there's tremendous opportunity there, and I'm really encouraged by what you've done here with Phoenix.
Thank you for that, General Reynolds. I agree. This is not easy work. I mean, it involves the equities of very many organizations and individuals, but I think everyone understands that there's a common purpose and a common outcome here. Imagine an opportunity to have a DoD tech strategy and tech roadmap for operations in the information environment that's at the point of integration of the hard science and soft science. Imagine having technical standards. Imagine having a mechanism to be able to reconcile and understand where that technology is being developed to reduce, to optimize investment and reduce redundancy, and be able to bring capability more rapidly to requirements. These are all components of outcomes of not only Phoenix Challenge, but an opportunity to illuminate what needs to be done at the department, and giving the department a platform to be able to coordinate and orchestrate those efforts. Look, this alone won't, it's not magic, and it won't. This alone won't solve all our issues, but it really is a useful way to commonly orient our very diverse and complex enterprise to be able to get at the strategic challenges and the competition that we're facing. There's a lot deeper here. I know we can get into a bunch of questions, but I thought that this would, General Reynolds and I thought that this might be a quick, nice subject matter to introduce to the community of information professionals that are on this call, and see if there are any questions.
So Kevin Gates, president of IPA. Austin, the one thing about this approach that you talked about that I think is important to keep in mind, you talked about the sort of set of work, Phoenix Challenge with a set of workshops attached to it, but it's sort of what separates this from the previous Phoenix Challenge is it's sort of almost infinitely scalable, right? Because, for example, we can, in addition to the groups that are planned to be brought together for those workshops, we could do excursions on that for other topics or to bring in other communities that may not be completely national security related. So sort of going back, whether that be international partners or bringing in the behavioral science community or bringing in VCs who would have a different perspective on the problem that may not be core to what you want to get at in Phoenix Challenge, but can all be additive to that process.
That actually goes to General Reynolds' point earlier, is that yes, it's intended to be the mothership of platforms, that they will be excursions that then we'll bring back into one of the quarterly events that is intended to be able to kind of build on the previous and to be informed by all the little micro workshops that are out there on very specific issues. I can tell you right now that there are other kind of sub workshops already in development. The U.S. Army Special Operations Command looking at synthetic training for operations in the information environment. We're looking at CENTCOM, SOCOM, and others focused on some of the work and that they're doing together in this space, and conferences and another workshop conference in May. So there's what we want to be able to do is connect all of these various what are currently disparate events and connect them all in ways that would be mutually beneficial to the enterprise. And to your point, over.
John, if I can just ask the question, I'll make it quick. And this is for General Reynolds. So kind of putting on your previous hat, when you were in uniform, like what would be some of those non-traditional communities that you might want to hear from and kind of bring into this Phoenix Challenge orbit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's not non-traditional. Austin already mentioned the Global Engagement Center. Our MCIOC, Marine Corps Information Operations Center, had some really good relationships with, the UK and the Australians and others who had some game to participate there. But then I think there's also some industry that might be willing to participate with us here. And the nice thing about this, Kevin, I think, is that this almost begins to give you a campaign plan-like approach, right? Where, to your point, there might be things we're not even thinking of. There might be, tech providers that can offer something for MISO operations, for example, that we have not yet thought about. And so, but the fact that it is going to be a predictable time frame, we're going to have a quarterly approach, we're going to bring everybody together, we're going to be able to build on previous efforts. I'm really encouraged by the opportunity here. Largely speaking, as a DCI, there was a lot of just follow your gut going on from my perspective. I mean, I'm an IT person, I became a cyber person, and I began to see what was happening when I was at US Cyber Command with the power of bringing all these things together in a really comprehensive way. But when you get to the service level and you start thinking about man, train, equip, you're pretty much following your gut right now. And so, having a consortia like this where you can really, have a way to kind of keep abreast of what the other services are doing and what the COCOMs are asking for, it would have been really nice to have this over the last couple of years.
That's a great point, General Reynolds, and important coming from a service leader. So thanks for the question, Kevin. And let me add, I also, to try and also touch on your question, Kevin, I also see not only Phoenix Challenge, but IPA and others and groups like this as gateways to the private sector, gateway, and not to the traditional defense industry, into organizations that have exquisite capabilities and access and bringing unique skills, talent, and ideas that'll help address some of these problems. I'm going to spotlight a friend of mine where we have a very different approach. On this call is Tony Scrow, the CEO of Adventure Partners, who brings together university students and finds ways for university students to enable that creativity to focus on disinformation. An extraordinary, unique approach to getting at some of the problem sets where DoD and others would not necessarily. We don't have the skill set for that. We don't understand or the mechanisms and the ability to motivate and inspire these university students to focus on disinformation and the creativity they have. That's just one example of this effort to be a gateway and a trusted gateway with organizations like that. Tony, did I say that right?
Thank you, Austin. Yes. Yeah, mobilizing students while they're actually earning academic credit to tackle very serious problems, either from a strategic perspective in making recommendations and assessments, or actually implementing plans as well, both locally, regionally, and globally.
So imagine the idea of being able to tap into, learn from, and inform efforts like that. So we want to be as creative as possible and use this as a platform for that. So Kevin, I kind of expanded on your question.
Great discussion. This is John Bicknell again. I'll foot stomp that last point. And we've actually got a podcast coming out in a couple of weeks to our podcast audience and to the IPA members gathered here with a couple of students who led a team from the Middlebury International Institute of Studies. I might not have gotten that just right. They're out of Monterey, but they worked via Tony Scrow and Adventures Partners and the McCain Institute, and they won a contest recently on an innovative approach to countering hate. So everybody is in for a real treat to hear about that study and ongoing effort, but it goes directly to what we were just talking about. Can we have another question, please? Joey Bates, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, generals. So my question, going into the unique transition that we're facing with not only influence activities overseas, the integration of the private sector AI tools that we've been fortunate enough to have between C2IE, OpenIO, GecIQ, EchoSec Scroll. There's a plethora of them, and I would venture to say that every single tool brings something to the table uniquely. But standardizing how we use these tools at the COCOM, I think, is the issue, because when it first came out, C2IE, from my understanding, was intended to be the aggregate tool that people go to get that operational battle space awareness picture. But talking with sister COCOMs, I don't feel like that is the case. But one thing that I've personally been working on with the MFEC and MAR4Com is developing a construct where there's an equality amongst services and how we look at non-kinetic and kinetic fires within the MFEC. And most recently during Global Thunder, they built an SOP to share it amongst the fleets. And I think the issue, and my question is, how do you see influence activities being able to be relevant aboard naval platforms, considering the constraints of authorities? And I understand that the CJCSI lays out all the authorities of themes to stress, themes to approve, but I feel like we still have to conduct a mother may I to the COCOMs. I think we figured it out on the Army side, but the naval side is where I believe we're going to have some issues with employment if we can't standardize a process of delegation. Over.
Yeah, Austin, I'll take a shot at that. And I appreciate the question, because we've been working on that a little bit. The Navy has a slightly different approach to the information environment than the Marine Corps does. But I think when you bring together the Marine Corps approach to operations in the information environment with the kind of systems to systems confrontation approach that the Navy has based on its mission, the IW specific approach, then you really get the best of both worlds. And what we're starting to see, at least in Second Fleet, Sixth Fleet, AO, when we brought the MiG aboard the ship, when we offered, Marines to participate in the N39, was really kind of the best of both worlds. So I think the real thing is you need to plan for this, right? You need to plan for this. You need to, allow information to drive operations, which is what we started to see when we brought the MiG together with the fleet. And then I think it's just going to be, it's going to be willing commanders that are open to seeing what can be done when you bring a different skill set to the fight. So, by the way, I really believe, and I have said this, I said it before I retired, I'm still saying it. I think for the competition, for the strategic competition, General Berger talks a lot about this idea of campaigning, right? If you really want to have a campaigning approach in the information environment, then you need to get organized for that, right? And so I'm still not quite sure that we're properly organized for campaigning. And so that's just something that maybe Phoenix Challenge in the future would look at that. Do we have the right organizational construct for campaigning in the information environment? Because along with that would come, permissions, the right, the SOPs, you're set for it, you're ready. You're not building it from scratch every time, the fleet sails. So hope that answered your question.
Sean Guillory.
Hello. My name is Sean Guillory. I help build up the different cognitive capabilities at Booz Allen Hamilton around the stuff. And I'll be very quick on the exposition. But what I saw on that slide really, really excited me because it feels like a lot of the things that I'm working on have been kind of like siloed in terms of here, like, okay, Indo-PACOM, you do this stuff, UCOM, you do this stuff, you do with NATO's over here. And it feels like part of my job is kind of like putting a lasso around all of that and calling it a capability. I don't think a single thing that I'm currently working on wasn't included in that side, which was very exciting because in terms of the true effort that's going to take for this bigger problem, it's going to have to be interagency. It's going to have to be multinational. It's going to have to be cross-sector. I saw that on that slide. So if anything, in terms of a question for, again, that thing that I'm looking for that some folks, haphazardly want like a resurrection of like USIA or something that can like get to that. I felt like I saw that on the slide, that kind of bigger effort, but feel free to curb my enthusiasm in terms of like what it may be not. Because again, I definitely see it as a codifying of that networks that Austin talked about. But in terms of what it can have in terms of not enforcing, but kind of like making bigger moves in this space in terms of like helping out with different nations and getting, the research in and helping out with, our different allies. Tell me if I'm reading too much in that. Like, so again, feel free to put like what it may be not, because again, maybe I'm seeing too big of what it is, because it seems like it's the Phoenix Challenge in terms of what I saw on that slide could really be hitting that mark for that bigger whole of society effort that I really think that we need to address these things in this space. Thank you.
Sean, it's not a command and control organization. It is not. It is not some giant lab. It is simply the analogy I used. Let me give you. I'll give you. I got a call from an organization that said, "Hey, Austin, can you help me connect to the various information related units, organizations, and places that because we have an AIML capability set. This is a government organization that we want to be able to be supportive of." And I said, there's too many, and you don't know. So what this is, it's the watering hole. It's the one place where we all gather that we could share, we can interact, and we can hold each other mutually accountable. But it is not a command and control organization. It is a DoD-sponsored convening series. It is intended to harness all the disparate efforts and allow for the free exchange of the necessary information and capabilities and efforts that are going on. This has worked before, and we expect that this will work again. Is use the power to convene, to commonly orient, and then take our resources and activate and orient them in the ways that we need to advance our department's capabilities. And more broadly, for those who are on this call that are not in the Department of Defense, thank you for your patience with all the terminology and efforts, but recognize that we've got to get our own house a little tighter to be better partners to our not only our international partners, but certainly to our own interagency. And this is one of those efforts to be able to do that. It's in support of the evolution of leadership at the Office of Secretary of Defense and the Joint Staff as directed by Congress. And this is just one mechanism to be able to kind of herd folks, around the watering hole, so we can all, reduce the mystery of what's going on out there, from technology to policy to methods and applications, test and evaluation and training. And it helps our services as well to work together in the areas that they feel are of interest to collaborate on. So, Sean, I hope that helps.
This is John Bicknell again. Not seeing anybody else's hand raised. I'd like to inject a question, if I may, to General Reynolds. Ma'am, the Marine Corps just released a MAR admin announcing the establishment of Occupational Field 1700, the Information Maneuver Occupational Field. This didn't happen overnight. Do you think you could give a download as to what the implications are and a background?
Yeah, John, thanks a lot for asking that question. I'm really excited by this, because you're right. Something like this doesn't, it took us a minute. But look, our observation was, so we created the 1700 MOS, which is originally for our cyberspace, offense, defense, Marines. Because my observation when I commanded the cyber force was that once in cyber, you needed to stay in cyber, right? To advance the skill set, advance the experience, create masters, all of those things that really matter for cyber. When we created the MEF information groups back in 2017, 2018, we created a single command that was designed to bring together all of the different specialties that would help a commander think about operating in the information environment. So you have the intelligence capability, you have the comm capability. We wanted additional PSYOP capability in that organization. We wanted additional ComStrat capability in that organization. We built defensive cyber companies in that organization. And so the idea, again, for the MIG, the MEF Information Group, a colonel level command that works directly for a MEF commander, was have one commander who is able to see everything in the information environment and help plan and integrate operations in the information environment. But when we did that back in 2018, we didn't have permanent specialties by the way of Marine operational specialties where we could say, yeah, I need a space guy here, I need a PSYOP guy here, and so we had this placeholder that basically said you can put any MOS, any background in that, and then we train them on the fly. That doesn't work in this space. At the same time, we had so many of these Naval Postgraduate School graduates who were getting advanced degrees in space operations and tech IO and some of these other skill sets. But our model in the past had been that they would do their payback from their master's degree, and then we would send them back to their original military occupational specialty. And the likelihood of them being promoted, by the way, was reduced because they had been out of their specialty. Their original specialty was infantry, and I now give them a 3-year degree in space operations, 2-year payback or 3-year payback, and now they're 6 years out of the infantry and they really didn't fare well. So what we did was we fought to keep those folks who had those degrees in space and tech IO and allow them to lateral move into what we're now calling the Information Maneuver MOS. So we have repurposed the 17 occupational field so that we now have a broader occupational field where we have cyber now. We're allowing Marines to lat move into IO, tech IO, and space. So now if I'm a space guy with an MPS degree, I do my payback, I want to stay in space, and I'm going to be a 1706. And now I can go be a MiG operations officer or a MiG XO, and I'm going to bring those advanced skills and that experience. And so it's really exciting. It's going to fill some critical gaps that we have out in the operating forces, this just-in-time training mentality that is not helpful when you're in the fight. And so this new MAR-admin that they just got this across the line, it's really exciting. And oh, by the way, on the space side, we're saying that we were losing some Marines to the Space Force because they wanted to stay in space, but they wanted to be Marines and there was no place that we could keep them. Now we can keep them. So this is not to compete with the Space Force. This is to enable the MAGTF to terminate space capabilities, if you will, or enable space capabilities. Think space control EW, those kinds of capabilities, they're right in the MAGTF. So it's really exciting. John, thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about that, because this is this was really exciting for the information community in the Marine Corps.
Austin, I didn't hear you say, when the Phoenix Challenge is, where it is.
Yeah. So the first Phoenix Challenge 1, this will be the first one, will be the 26th through the 28th of April. It'll be secret. It'll be held at the secret REL Five Eyes plus France at the Applied Research Lab for Intelligence Security at the University of Maryland. And as soon as the leadership at Policy and USDI release the announcement letter, the Phoenix Challenge website will be up for registration, and then you'll see a draft. You'll see the draft agenda for the 3 days. Again, focused on those areas that I said on the approach: setting the stage, the services, enablers, joint force, our international partners, and industry in the private sector. And again, I mentioned CENTCOM has partnered with us to consolidate the Worldwide IO Conference into this one event. And then a few months later, in late June, we'll have Phoenix Challenge 2, and in partnership with a Naval Postgraduate School, and then more to follow. So that's and you can go to the IPA website for those updates as well for members. And so hopefully that the formal announcements will go out soon as we get the release from OSD. Hopefully that helps for folks. And I know we got to wrap this up, but I just want to say thank you for the folks dialing in from all over the world to listen to this discussion. And thanks to IPA for hosting. And I hope we have many more with other folks coming in here and talking about issues and listening to the membership, and let the membership help shape this professional association's efforts on their behalf.
Mr. Austin Branch and Lieutenant General Lori Reynolds, you have both given us a lot to think about. Thank you very much for participating on the Cognitive Crucible.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.